Hi, everybody. It's me, Sam. I must say, you guys look terrific. Okay, welcome to the Thesis Doctor. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the thesis statement because it's so important. And after this rough draft, next week, many of you are going to have to revise your thesis statements. And don't get frustrated. That's very normal. Your thesis statements so far are working thesis statements. Now, why are you going to have to revise them? Well, because the thesis statement is so vastly important. While students often have a hard time with thesis statements, the thesis remains the most important element of the academic essay. Why is it so important? Well, because everything else in the essay is about the thesis statement. Every single word in your essay must support or defend or illustrate and so on your thesis statement. If there's a word in your essay that doesn't support or directly relate or indirectly relate even to the thesis statement, you got to cut it. You got to get rid of it. Now, if you have a weak thesis statement, or if you have no thesis statement at all, your reader is left wondering, what are these words in this essay doing? What is the purpose of this? I have no idea why these words are here, why I'm reading this thing. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to take you through my process. Okay, I love college basketball. I want to write a thesis statement for this essay, our argumentative essay using research about college basketball. I'm particularly fond of the University of Kansas Jayhawks. That's where I went to school, and also I grew up in Kansas, so I've been watching the Jayhawks for a long time, and I love them. Okay, that's my topic, college basketball. So before I go anywhere further, I'm just going to think. Maybe I have a possible thesis right off the bat that I can just whip up. So here it goes. College basketball is, pretty dang terrific. Okay, that thesis statement stinks. It's a terrible thesis statement. First of all, it's not worthwhile. Who cares if I think that college basketball is pretty dang terrific? Nobody, really. Now, one reason nobody cares is because it's subjective. In other words, it's just my opinion. You may have a totally different opinion, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's just not a worthwhile thesis statement. It's also worth noting that the tone is inappropriate. And it's only inappropriate in this context. I'm writing an academic argumentative essay, right? If you and I were at a party, and your name's Steve, I'd say, hey, Steve, college basketball is, pretty dang terrific. And the tone would be totally appropriate. But for this essay, it's not appropriate. Sometimes in your comments, or in the comments that I leave on your essay, I'll say this tone is inappropriate. I don't mean it's inappropriate for everything, just for this particular assignment. You have to write for the assignment. Okay, so I have to go back to the drawing board, right? I have to think to myself, what is my purpose here? Why am I writing this thesis statement? What do I need to do? Well, you get your purpose from the assignment itself, right? The assignment is to persuade. I'm arguing. I'm trying to persuade my reader. Now, what do you persuade a reader to do? Well, you persuade them to do or to think something, right? So here's a bad example of my next thesis statement. College basketball is a big moneymaker. Okay. There's no persuasion here. This is simply a truism. College basketball is, in fact, a big moneymaker. I could show you the number. I could say, look, right here it says, according to this source, that in March and April every year, college basketball generates $700 million. And you would say, gee whiz, he's right. It's a big moneymaker. There's nothing to argue there. So, I have a real couple of stinker thesis statements. So I have to continue to think. I'm going to think, does a problem exist? And I think it while scratching my head. Okay, now I've asked a lot of you this same question. I've asked you, what problem are you addressing? So, who cares if a problem exists? Why is that even important? Why do I keep asking you that? Why am I harping on this idea of a problem? Well, because our solution to a problem is what we are going to argue for, right? The solution is is the crux of our essay in this case. So let me give you a very simplified example of this. Let's say my wife and I are going to eat something, but we don't know what we're going to eat. And she wants Italian food, and I'm a big fat burrito. That's what I want. Okay, we have a problem. The problem is we don't know what we're going to eat for dinner. Okay? In this scenario, I'm going to argue for my solution. My solution is to eat a big fat burrito. Her solution is that she wants Italian food. So she's going to argue for that. Now, her claim is that she wants something light, so Italian food. Okay, I will rebut her argument and say that, first of all, Mexican food is less expensive than Italian food, generally. And that's not a minor thing, right? It's good to save money, and we've got a family to support. We can't just buy Italian food every night. And also that at a Mexican restaurant, the menus are varied. You can get a salad at a Mexican restaurant. You can get a light taco sort of thing. I mean, there are all kinds of options, while at an Italian restaurant, it's mostly just pasta, which, coincidentally, pasta isn't all that light, right? So, I think it's all clear who wins that argument. We're getting big fat burritos tonight. You know what I mean? Okay, that's an example of an argument. I've addressed the problem, I found the problem, and then I argued for my solution. Okay, so I go back to my topic, college basketball, and I think, what is the problem? What problem am I going to address? Well, there is one problem, and at least one problem, and that is that the superstars are leaving college after their freshman year for the NBA. And why this is a problem is that, well, first of all, they aren't ready. You know, they get to the NBA and their careers hit the tank, and they're not good, or they get injured, or, you know, they're in and out of the NBA very quickly. And if they're in and out of the NBA very quickly and they don't have a college degree, well, then where are they? They're not in great shape. It also, if freshmen are continually leaving for the NBA early, it leaves the NCAA college basketball with a lack of continuity, which I think is bad for college basketball. It's bad for the fans. It's bad for the students. So, my solution? Well, don't let them leave until at least after their sophomore year. Make them go through 2 years of college before they go to the NBA. Now, check this out. This solution is contentious. In other words, it has an opposition. Right now, they can leave after their freshman year. And a lot of people think that's great. You know, I would have to make a lot of claims, and I would have to do a lot of research and really prove that my solution to this problem is the right solution, because somebody else has a better solution. Maybe another group thinks that college shouldn't be mandatory at all, that they should be able to go straight from high school, which they used to be able to do. Anyway, this is a contentious solution. It's arguable. It has a couple of sides, and it can be argued effectively with research. So here's my thesis. To allow basketball players, sorry, I'll put on my official voice. To allow basketball players to better develop and to provide continuity in college basketball, young superstars should be forced to remain in college for at least 2 years. All right, this is an okay working thesis statement. It's not great, I'll admit, but it's getting there, and it's a working thesis statement. That means that it can change, and it can adapt as I start to draft the essay. But now I have a roadmap to my essay. I have a purpose, and I have an opinion. I know what I'm trying to prove and what I'm trying to illustrate and what I'm trying to support with my essay, right? So the whole essay now has to work to prove that one sentence. The sentence can change throughout my drafting process, and it can be altered a little bit. Maybe I'll find research that leads me to believe that they should be in for 3 years, or they should be forced to graduate from college. And then I'll adapt and I'll change it that way. But this is a good place to start. Okay. The working thesis statement, like I said, it's a roadmap for writing. The every single thing in the essay must support, illuminate, relate to, explain, or argue for the thesis statement. In other words, let's say in the middle of my essay, I have a paragraph about how expensive Cokes are at games. Totally irrelevant. Has nothing to do with how long college basketball players stay in the game, right? Or how long they're in college. I cut that. I have to just totally cut that paragraph. It's irrelevant. All right. Don't get frustrated. If I have you revise your thesis statement, just know that that's a totally normal part of this process. The process of writing is more about the process than it is about the end product. I know some teachers won't tell you that. They'll say that all they want is a solid essay. But writing is more than just writing a solid essay. It's about working it out. It's like taking a piece of wood. Maybe this is a bad analogy, but I'll do it anyway. It's about taking a piece of wood and whittling it down and smoothing it over and sanding it and working with the obstacles in that wood. There's knots here, there's knots there, there's a rough end. Trying to overcome those obstacles until you get a really nice little whittled sculpture, right? You have to work it through. You have to find those problems and you have to solve them as they come up. I'm ending today with a picture of the burrito because it looks delicious, and that's all I've got. You guys are doing really excellent work in here. Please let me know if you need anything. See you soon.